What if Hollywood's greatest ladies' man had secrets he never dared confess? Errol Flynn, the rogue, the rebel, the matinee idol, dazzled generations with his smirk and swordplay. But beyond the silver screen, behind the fame, there was another story, buried in whispers and locked behind studio doors. Before we get to the hidden truths, we need to understand the man behind the legend. Errol Flynn was born Errol Leslie Thompson Flynn on June 20th, 1909, in Hobart, Tasmania. He was one of the most iconic and charismatic actors of Hollywood's golden age, known for his swashbuckling roles, devil-may-care attitude, and undeniable on-screen magnetism. He was the son of Theodore Thompson Flynn, a respected biology professor, and Lily Mary Young, a woman of Irish descent who encouraged his early independence. From an early age, Flynn demonstrated a rebellious spirit and a thirst for adventure, traits that would later become integral to both his real-life persona and the characters he portrayed on screen. His early years were filled with expulsions from schools, run-ins with authority, and even a brief stint as a gold prospector in Papua New Guinea, which only added to the legend of his untamed youth. Flynn's path to stardom was anything but conventional. Before entering the world of film, he tried his hand at various occupations: plantation overseer, fisherman, journalist, even working aboard ships. All of these real-life experiences would later inform the rugged, fearless characters he brought to life. His natural good looks, athleticism, and adventurous nature caught the eye of Warner Brothers in the early 1930s. Soon after, he was cast in his breakthrough role, Captain Blood, in 1935. The performance catapulted him into instant fame. And that film was also the beginning of one of Hollywood's most beloved on-screen duos, Errol Flynn and Olivia de Havilland. Throughout the 1930s and 1940s, Flynn starred in a string of wildly successful action-adventure films, many of them period pieces that required swordplay, horseback riding, and a sense of daring that few actors could convincingly portray. His most legendary role was perhaps Robin Hood in The Adventures of Robin Hood, 1938, a film celebrated for its vibrant technicolor, thrilling stunts, and Flynn's spirited, heroic portrayal of the legendary outlaw. Other hits included The Seahawk, 1940, Dodge City, 1939, and They Died with Their Boots On, 1941, a biographical film where he played General George Custer. Flynn became the quintessential swashbuckler, a role that combined gallantry, wit, physical prowess, and romantic charm. Yet off-screen, Flynn's life mirrored the high-octane drama of his films, though often with more tragedy and scandal. Known for his love of women, alcohol, and adventure, his personal life was frequently the subject of tabloid scrutiny. In 1942, he was infamously charged with statutory rape, though he was ultimately acquitted. A trial that, while damaging to his reputation, did little to affect his box office appeal. The phrase "in like Flynn" entered the popular lexicon during this era, a nod to both his courtroom victory and his reputed success with women. However, the toll of his fast-paced lifestyle, compounded by substance abuse and personal turmoil, began to show as he aged. In later years, Flynn attempted to take on more serious roles to demonstrate his range as an actor, such as his performance in That Forsyte Woman, 1949, and The Sun Also Rises, 1957, in which he played older, more nuanced characters. He also wrote a candid, and at times shocking, autobiography titled My Wicked, Wicked Ways, published posthumously in 1959. It offered an unfiltered glimpse into his tumultuous life, revealing both his regrets and his unrepentant appetite for living on the edge. The book has since become a cult classic and is often cited as one of the most engaging Hollywood autobiographies ever written. Errol Flynn, the legendary Hollywood swashbuckler, known for his dashing good looks and adventurous on-screen persona, was married 3 times throughout his tumultuous and headline-grabbing personal life. His first marriage was to French-American actress Lily Demita, whom he wed in 1935. Demita, a former Ziegfeld Follies girl and an established film star in her own right, was nearly 5 years Flynn's senior and brought glamour and sophistication to the union. Their relationship was famously volatile, marked by passionate highs and explosive conflicts. Despite their many public and private disputes, the couple remained married for 7 years, before ultimately divorcing in 1942. During that time, they had one child, a son named Sean Flynn, born in 1941. A boy whose future would later mirror his father's thirst for adventure and end in heartbreak. Flynn's second marriage took place in 1943, shortly after his divorce from Demita, this time to Nora Eddington, a young woman he met under highly publicized circumstances while she was working as a clerk in the courthouse during Flynn's controversial statutory rape trial in 1942, from which he was ultimately acquitted. Eddington, significantly younger than Flynn, was swept up into his fast-paced lifestyle and the spotlight of Hollywood fame. Together, they had 2 daughters, Deirdre, born in 1945, and Rory, born in 1947. The marriage lasted until 1949, a period that saw Flynn's career begin to decline as his off-screen behavior increasingly overshadowed his professional accomplishments. Though their union ended in divorce, Flynn reportedly remained on relatively good terms with Eddington, compared to the bitterness of his first marriage. In 1950, Flynn married for the third and final time to actress Patrice Wymore, a striking and talented performer whom he had met while filming the romantic comedy Rocky Mountain. At just 23 years old when they married, Wymore was over 20 years Flynn's junior. Unlike his previous marriages, his relationship with Wymore was, by most accounts, more stable and enduring. Though not without its own challenges, largely due to Flynn's declining health and continued struggles with alcoholism. In 1953, they welcomed their only child, a daughter named Arnella Roma Flynn. Arnella, much like her half-brother Sean, led a life tinged by the legacy of her father's fame and the shadows of personal tragedy. She would pass away in 1998 at the age of 44. Through his daughter Rory Flynn, Errol Flynn became the maternal grandfather of actor and musician Sean Flynn, named in honor of Rory's late half-brother. This younger Sean Flynn carved out his own place in the entertainment industry, most notably starring as Chase Matthews in the popular Nickelodeon television series Zoe 101, which aired in the mid-2000s. In this way, the Flynn family legacy continued into the 21st century, bridging the golden age of Hollywood with modern youth culture on television. Following his gradual retreat from the Hollywood spotlight, Errol Flynn spent a significant portion of his later years living in Port Antonio, a small but picturesque town on the northeastern coast of Jamaica. He relocated there in the early 1950s with Patrice Wymore, seeking refuge from the scrutiny and chaos of Hollywood life, and hoping to regain a sense of peace and privacy. Enchanted by the island's lush landscapes, tranquil waters, and warm climate, Flynn quickly became a prominent figure in the local community. He purchased a sprawling estate known as Navy Island and became a vocal and enthusiastic promoter of Jamaican tourism, believing in the area's potential as a global destination. Flynn was not merely a passive resident, but played a hands-on role in fostering tourism and economic development in Port Antonio. He invested in the hospitality industry, at one point owning the Titchfield Hotel, one of the oldest hotels in the Caribbean. He also became famous for popularizing a unique and charming attraction, bamboo rafting down the Rio Grande River. Originally used to transport bananas, these rafts became a leisurely and scenic way for tourists to experience Jamaica's natural beauty, thanks in large part to Flynn's promotional efforts. His vision and charisma helped transform Port Antonio from a quiet coastal village into an emerging destination for adventurous and affluent travelers. By 1959, the once glittering career of Errol Flynn, one of Hollywood's most charismatic and controversial leading men, had fallen into steep decline, plagued not only by waning stardom, but also by deepening financial instability. Known during the 1930s and 1940s as the swashbuckling hero of films such as Captain Blood and The Adventures of Robin Hood, Flynn had, by the end of the decade, become a shadow of his former self. Lavish spending, legal troubles, failed investments, and a lifestyle marked by excess in every imaginable form, alcohol, drugs, and relationships, had left his finances in disarray. In a bid to stave off insolvency, Flynn boarded a plane on October 9, 1959, heading north to Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. His purpose was to negotiate the lease of his beloved yacht, the Zaka, to a Canadian businessman named George Callow. The Zaka, a 118-foot schooner, had once symbolized Flynn's adventurous spirit and wealth. Over the years, it had hosted countless celebrities, parties, and sea voyages. But now, it represented one of the few remaining valuable assets he could leverage to ease his financial burden. Flynn was not alone on this trip. Accompanying him was 17-year-old actress Beverly Odland, with whom he was involved in a controversial and much publicized romantic relationship. Despite the scandal that surrounded their affair, Flynn appeared unfazed by public opinion, continuing to bring Odland along with him in both private and professional spheres. Their bond, as unsettling as it was to many observers, seemed to give Flynn a measure of companionship and purpose in his final years. On October 14th, just 5 days after arriving in Canada, Flynn and Odland were being driven by Callow to the airport to catch a return flight to Los Angeles, when Flynn suddenly began experiencing intense pain in his back and legs. His discomfort was so severe and abrupt that Callow became alarmed and quickly changed course, instead bringing Flynn to the home office of Dr. Grant Gould, a local physician. When they arrived at Gould's residence, Flynn struggled significantly with mobility. Witnesses later recalled that the once athletic actor, whose on-screen persona had been defined by agility and dashing swordplay, had great difficulty climbing the stairs, his body now clearly betraying decades of hard living. Dr. Gould, attempting to diagnose the cause of Flynn's pain, suspected degenerative disc disease and spinal osteoarthritis, both common in older individuals and exacerbated in Flynn's case by years of alcohol abuse, physical strain, and neglect of personal health. To alleviate the acute pain, Gould administered 50 milligrams of Demerol, Pathine, a powerful opioid analgesic, via intravenous injection. The medication brought Flynn rapid relief, and as the searing pain began to subside, he reportedly became loquacious and reflective. In what would be one of his final lucid hours, he launched into a lengthy and vivid recounting of past exploits, stories filled with bravado, fame, faraway lands, romantic escapades, and the glories of his cinematic heyday. Those in the room listened intently, as the aging star, so often portrayed in the media as reckless and scandal-ridden, bared a more human side, wistful, nostalgic, and perhaps seeking to reclaim some dignity in his twilight. When someone offered him an alcoholic drink, something he would rarely turn down in earlier years, Flynn declined. The gesture was significant, a quiet indication that he may have sensed the gravity of his physical condition, or that he had grown weary of the vice that had dominated his life. Dr. Gould, having seen some improvement in Flynn's demeanor, suggested that he lie down and rest before continuing to the airport. Flynn agreed and moved into the bedroom, where Gould performed a gentle massage on his legs to further relax his muscles and improve circulation. Flynn responded with gratitude, telling Gould that he felt ever so much better. It was a deceptively hopeful moment, offering a brief illusion of recovery. However, just 20 minutes later, Beverly Odland went to check on him and found Flynn unresponsive. Panic ensued. Dr. Gould rushed to administer emergency care, and an ambulance was called without delay. Flynn was transported to Vancouver General Hospital, but despite all efforts to revive him, he never regained consciousness. That evening, one of Hollywood's most iconic and controversial figures was pronounced dead at the age of 50. The subsequent coroner's report and official death certificate identified the primary cause of death as myocardial infarction, commonly known as a heart attack, brought on by coronary thrombosis and extensive coronary atherosclerosis, which are conditions involving the clotting and hardening of the arteries supplying blood to the heart. Additional contributing factors included fatty degeneration of the liver and partial cirrhosis, both conditions stemming from chronic and severe alcohol abuse. These findings painted a tragic, but unsurprising medical portrait of a man whose body had long suffered under the weight of excess, stress and disregard. In a stunning and revelatory posthumous memoir, legendary swashbuckling actor Errol Flynn, long known for his rakish charm and turbulent love life, allegedly opens up about a side of his private world that had been cloaked in secrecy for decades. The matinee idol, who rose to fame in the 1930s with films like Captain Blood and The Adventures of Robin Hood, had cultivated a reputation as a ladies' man. But as newly uncovered writings suggest, Flynn's personal life was far more complex and layered than the public ever knew. According to these writings, whether they be private letters, rumored journals, or the whispered accounts of confidants, Flynn claimed to have had romantic and sexual relationships with several prominent male actors during Hollywood's golden age, a time when being openly gay could destroy a career. In these pages, he does not sensationalize or scandalize his experiences, but instead speaks candidly and with surprising tenderness about the emotional connections he shared behind closed doors with men who, like himself, lived under the oppressive shadow of a rigid studio system and a judgmental society. Flynn allegedly writes with particular fondness about a long-rumored relationship with Tyrone Power, the charismatic heartthrob whose own sexuality has been the subject of speculation for years. Tyrone had an elegance, a vulnerability that drew me in, Flynn purportedly recalled. Our moments together were rare jewels, stolen from a world that would never have understood. Power, married multiple times and fiercely private, had long kept the details of his personal life sealed. And if Flynn's writings are to be believed, the two shared a brief but passionate bond, hidden by the glamour and illusion of Hollywood's public-facing persona. Another name mentioned in these private recollections is Cary Grant, often described by contemporaries as enigmatic and complex. While Grant was famously married 5 times, his longtime living arrangement with actor Randolph Scott stirred rumors for decades. Flynn hints at a brief romantic entanglement with Grant early in their careers, writing, "Cary had a wit and warmth that belied the polished veneer he presented to the world. For a time, we found comfort in one another. Nothing more, nothing less." If true, it places Flynn at the nexus of a secretive circle of bisexual and gay actors who navigated a treacherous double life in Hollywood. Flynn also reflects on his encounters with lesser-known but equally compelling figures, such as Farley Granger, known for his roles in Hitchcock's Rope and Strangers on a Train. Granger would later come out as bisexual in his own memoir, but Flynn claims they shared a mutual curiosity and warmth in their early days at Warner Brothers, when both were young and trying to find themselves in an industry that demanded rigid conformity. The memoir touches, too, on the fear and paranoia that permeated the era. Studio heads like Jack Warner and Louis B. Mayer enforced strict morality clauses and expected stars to play by the rules, or else. Flynn describes the pressure to maintain a hyper-masculine image, the staged publicity romances, and the constant fear that a single misstep could lead to exposure, disgrace, and professional ruin. "We lived in a world of shadows," he writes. "We wore masks, even in our sleep." Notably, Flynn's reflections don't merely dwell on sexual encounters, but explore the emotional depth and longing involved. He writes of quiet evenings hidden away from the spotlight, of laughter shared over whiskey and jazz records, of stolen glances at studio parties, and of tearful goodbyes forced by circumstance and fear. "We were all actors, even when the cameras weren't rolling," he muses. "But when the curtain fell, we were just men, yearning to be seen, to be loved." If authenticated, Flynn's confessions could reframe public understanding of his complex legacy. Long dismissed as a womanizer and hedonist and haunted by serious accusations in his lifetime, these reflections suggest a man grappling with identity, navigating love in an unforgiving time, and cherishing moments of connection that history never recorded. Of course, skeptics may question the veracity of such memoirs. Some believe they are apocryphal, or the product of mythologizing after the actor's death in 1959. But whether true or merely part of the larger mythology surrounding Errol Flynn, these accounts offer a compelling narrative, one that brings into focus the hidden realities of queer life in classic Hollywood. In the end, Flynn's words, real or imagined, echo a deeper truth about the era. Behind the glittering facade of stardom, many lived in silence, loving in secret and dreaming of a world that might one day embrace them fully. Errol Flynn lived loud, but loved in silence. His story isn't just about fame or scandal, it's about longing, courage, and the price of hiding who you are. If this story touched you, tell us in the comments. And if you're ready for more truths Hollywood never dared to show, subscribe, and stay with us. Because behind every legend, there's a heart that just wanted to be seen.